All right, guys, joining us on the program is the woman behind Seven Generation Games, the first ever American to win a gold medal at the World Judo Championships in 1984, and of course the mother of UFC and WWE now superstar Ronda Rousey. It is a pleasure to welcome Dr. AnnMaria De Mars back to Submission Radio. She's on a sweet couch with a yellow cushion, as we just mentioned. Ann, how are you? Welcome back to the show.
I'm doing good. It's good to be back in the U.S. for like 3 days, and life is good.
I know, and it's crazy because you're over in Denver right now. You mentioned you're at a software conference there for Seven Generation Games. Before we talked about that, we want to touch on the most pressing issue at hand, and which is, of course, Ronda Rousey's awesome performance at Wrestlemania. Tell us, did you watch it live, and what did you think?
I did. It was great. I was supposed to be at the opening session of this conference, and my husband, who is wonderful, got us a WWE pass so we could watch it on the computer. And so, we weren't there in person, but we watched it live, and I thought it was awesome.
How tough was that for you, not, as a mother, not to be there live, especially for, it wasn't her WWE debut, but, this is her WrestleMania moment. How tough was that for you not to be there? Was there any thoughts of, a last second, cancellation or a sneaky exit from the conference to go watch Ronda live?
Well, I did think about it, but, they had asked me to come here like 8 months ago. And they flew me here from Santiago, Chile, which is where I live now. And so I've always been very big with all my kids, even when they were tiny, like, in kindergarten. If you said you were going to go to somebody's house, you couldn't not go because your other friend asked you to go, for ice cream with them. So, Rhonda understood because we're very big about that. If you say you will show, you show. But her big sister went. So Maria was there. And Maria's oldest daughter, who Rhonda's her godmother, was there. So she had family representation. And, she knew we were watching her. So it was all good.
You mentioned that you moved to Santiago. That's pretty fresh. I think last time we spoke to you was still in LA or around America somewhere. What made you want to move internationally somewhere else?
Well, we're opening a Latin American office. We did open a Latin American office in Chile. And there's a program called Startup Chile where the Chilean government does a competition every year. And they will fund up to 50 or so companies from around the world to move to Santiago and open an office. And they cover your office rent and salaries for employees and your travel to move down there. And the deal is they want you to relocate to Chile for 7 months to a year. And what they're thinking is that the benefit for the country is that, they're literally on the other side of the world from many places like Silicon Valley. And it's their opportunity to build up their tech infrastructure and get all those people hired there. And so, it's a pretty brilliant idea. And for us, since we make games that teach English and Spanish, we teach math in English and Spanish, it was kind of a natural fit. And, I'm always one up for a challenge. So now that I've started a company, now I decided I'll start another company in another country on the other side of the world in my second language.
Wow. How are you finding it so far? That's a huge move, especially, after you would have sort of had an establishment, you've gotten pretty comfortable in the US. How are you finding it now? And how long have you been there for?
2.5 months. I really like it. Obviously, my Spanish has gotten really good. It's a lot of challenges. Like the first month I was there, they said, hey, we entered you in the startup pitch competition. So you're going to pitch your startup in front of 100 people, and we're going to stream it live to thousands of people. Oh, by the way, it's in Spanish.
Oh.
So it's a lot of challenges, but it's good. And, we make games, and I know that they make a difference for kids. So it's a real opportunity to get into Latin America. So I'm super duper excited about it.
Unbelievable. And we have some questions about the games because there's a lot of exciting things happening. Just quickly back to Ronda. A lot of people are wondering how long she actually trained for her match debut at WrestleMania. She looked absolutely spectacular. I think a lot of people had high hopes for her, and she exceeded all of them. When did she begin training for this? And also, when you found out she was making this transition, what was your reaction to it? It's a completely different industry, but it's an industry your family kind of knows quite well as well.
Well, I mean, we watched it. They had, when I was a kid, they had wrestling on TV. In fact, the big place they had it was Wrestling at the Chase. And I forget, it was like the Chase Stadium. The place, the Chase, was actually in St. Louis, which is where I was living when I was a kid. So I remember watching it on like local TV. Do they have public access in Australia? Do you know what that is?
I'm not too sure. Our TV channels, like up until a few years ago, we only had like 4 TV channels. So yeah, we didn't have a whole lot.
So basically, pro wrestling was kind of like on the lamest of the lame, low-level local stations.
Right.
But, when you're a kid, you don't have very high standards. So
Yeah.
I remember watching it as a kid, and a lot of my family, a lot of the relatives are like much more into WWE. Like, my like in-laws and, nieces and nephews, they're way more into WWE than they were into UFC. I mean, they like UFC. They they watched UFC because it was Ronda. If Ronda was on the women's soccer team, they would watch soccer. But so a lot of the relatives were super stoked. And for me, Ronda's done a lot of things. If she wants to stay home and pet her goats, or if she wants to go into WWE, if she's happy, that's fine with me. But she is really excited about it. Like I said, she even likes the T-shirts. I mean, she loves everything about it. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned T-shirts, just the whole get-up, and of course, the Rowdy nickname and the jacket from the late, great Roddy Piper. That's obviously great homage. We know Ronda had a great relationship with, judo Jean LaBelle. Did you spend much time around Roddy? And Ronda and Roddy both had great relationships with Jean LaBelle. Did you spend a lot of time around Roddy Piper? And are there any sort of memories that stand out to you of, yourself and Ronda and maybe and Roddy Piper sort of hanging out and, anything that you remember?
Well, he would just show up at the gym at High Stand every now and then because he and Jean were friends. And I remember he was there, and Ronda wanted to use the name Rowdy because she thought it was cool, but he already had it, and he happened to be coming by the gym, and she asked him, "Would you mind if I use the name?" He was very kind and gracious about it. But yeah, he would show up at the gym every now and then just to hang out with Jean. Yeah, and he was a really, really nice man. And then, of course, it was really, really sad that he passed away a couple of years ago. And now that I'm getting older, I think, gee, that wasn't very old. So I think Ronda was really happy to be able to do something to kind of honor him. And she, he has, I think, a young child, a young teen that's still in college, and she knows how it is, when you lost your dad. So I think that's pretty cool that she could do something. When you lose somebody in your family like that, like your dad, it's so hard on you, and it's good to realize that other people recognize that too. I mean, I don't know if either of you have ever been in that situation where, someone you loved died, but it's like your whole world is falling in, and everybody else in the world just goes on. So I know that that's something that to a family means a lot. So I think that's really cool that she kind of tried to recognize him when she was competing.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I know a lot of pro wrestling fans really, really happy about that as well because he's such a legend. Now, Ronda gave a bit of an interview after her match and said that apart from her wedding, this WWE in-match debut was the second best day of her life. Would you say she's loving this a little bit more than her MMA run, even when she was sort of dominating the UFC and was, the dominant champion?
Yes, I think so. And, I think everybody needs to know when to go. And when you're in a sport, and I say this for anybody, not just Ronda or UFC or judo or whatever, but when you're in a sport and when the tournament's over, the biggest thing is relief that you didn't lose or relief that it's over. That's the time to go, You should be going into an event and be excited to be there. This is so great. I get to go beat people up and they're not going to arrest me, So you should feel great about being in it, not just it being over and, oh my God, nothing bad happened. So I think she's really enjoying the journey and I'm really happy.
I feel like it's interesting that you mentioned that because I think in her last fight against Amanda Nunes, a lot of the community, the MMA community and the people watching, they kind of got this vibe from her that she wasn't that excited about being in the octagon and being there. And she wasn't as pumped up about it. Would you say that was probably one of those fights where it was kind of, she wasn't, I suppose she obviously trained and she was in amazing shape, but mentally and excitement level, it wasn't quite there for her.
Yeah, I don't know. I think she said something about that, but I don't remember, honestly.
You sort of mentioned about...
You get old and you forget things.
Yeah. I was going to say, you mentioned sort of, you should be happy and excited to sort of be there. Ronda also spoke about how, she felt the pressure because if she left, she felt like maybe the women's divisions couldn't sort of, I guess, survive without her. And maybe that was some of the pressure that was, I guess on her to keep staying, even though maybe she didn't really want to be there anymore. Do you think Did you ever sense that, and did you ever say anything to her about hey, look, if you're not happy doing this, then maybe you should do something else, like the WWE or something else?
I've told her that, and I tell all my girls that, and I tell graduate students that I teach that you don't owe anybody else your life, and you don't live your life by other people's expectations. So I think it's really great that she's doing what she's happy about doing now. And yes, I think it's the right thing in life to try and help other people, and make the world a little bit better when you can. But if you get to the point where, you're not, I just think too many people get out of bed and they're not excited to face the day. And it doesn't have to be like that, And so if you don't feel like that, you should change. And, and everybody probably goes through periods like that. I have, probably you guys have, when you have to have some kind of job that is not your cup of tea because you have kids and mortgages and stuff like that. So everybody has to go through periods like that, but you should be looking for getting in a better situation. If you're not getting up and excited about what you're doing, you don't owe it to anybody, to any group of people, to be unhappy. Somebody else can come along and save things. You can go, and a friend of mine said that once when someone was telling her how she should be doing something to help this group, and she said, look, I don't want to do that. And she's, that's your thing. But maybe mine is to save the whales, or, march for women's equal pay, or whatever it is. So I don't think you owe anybody else your life. My words of wisdom today.
No, it's very good words of wisdom. I think we all feel that in a lot of stuff that we've done previously or currently. So it's great that you mentioned that. I mean, it was a big performance from her at WrestleMania. Did she give you a call afterwards? When did you speak to her afterwards? And what was that conversation like now that she's done the match and it was so spectacular?
It's so funny. I did talk to her the next day, because I didn't call her right away because I figured there's going to be like a million people around, a million interviews. And I called her the next day when I was in the convention hall at this software conference, because I had met this other woman who is also a mom, who had done a paper on World of Warcraft. So I'm a statistical software conference. And her paper was on World of Warcraft, and she said, all these punk kids come in and say, well, I could beat you even though I have less armor or I have less equipment. And Ronda, I don't know if you know, this is like a super, super big World of Warcraft player. And she's like level 100 or whatever. I'm serious. And so...
Oh, really? Heard.
Yes. Wow. Yes. So this woman, Mary, was telling me all about it. And she's like this 40-ish mom with 3 kids who's a software developer who was out here. And her paper was on testing this hypothesis, whether it's really possible, if you have less armor and less weapons, can you actually defeat the other person in World of Warcraft because you have such great skills? And the answer is no, you can't. You're full of it. So, anyway, so I thought that was a riot. And I called up Ryan and said, yeah, I met one of your other World of Warcraft people. And we talked about her fight, and or fight, I don't know what you call it, her wrestling thingy. And yeah, she was very, very happy, looking great.
Well, after MMA, it sort of seemed like kind of dark times for Ronda, and as a mother, like I wonder sort of if that was worrying for you. And looking at her now in the WWE, is this sort of a relief for you to see Ronda find her next calling? And were you, Ronda being the driven person, I guess you said, it doesn't really matter if she sort of sits at home and she pets her goats, which kind of sounded like was always the plan, but were you ever sort of worried that she wouldn't find her next calling and sort of, have that level of happiness that she had, maybe once upon a time in MMA early on?
No, I figured she would figure it out. She's a really smart person. And there was a book called, it's very sad, the guy who wrote it passed away really young, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And it's all small stuff. But anyway, in the book, there's one point, I don't know if it was in that book or some interview with the author, he said that a friend of his said to him, you put your daughters under great pressure. And he said, what do you mean? I love my daughters more than anything. And his friend said, you want your daughters to be happy all the time. Can you imagine how much pressure that is on kids to be happy all the time? And that really kind of sat with me. And I try to accept and realize that as much as I want everything to be like all perfect and little rainbows and cupcakes for my kids, there are going to be times when it's difficult for them. And, they're adults now, even the baby's 20. And so I have to have the faith that they will work it through. You know, everybody will make mistakes, but you have to believe that they will work it out.
I've always wanted to ask you this because, we ask fighters about it, the fighter's mindset, sort of, dealing with tough losses, and you're a competitor, so you know all about it, and you spoke about how, nobody owes anybody anything, which I agree with. After those losses, Ronda obviously wasn't interested in speaking to the public about them, and sort of, I guess people didn't really know how to take that, with your background in psychology. Why, and obviously knowing her better than anyone else, why do you think that was sort of, I guess, the best way for her to deal with it? And why do you think she didn't really want to talk to, anyone like us or anyone else about those losses?
Well, you probably read, the book that Ronda and Maria wrote. Ronda's always had, she had trouble talking, and she, had to go through speech therapy for years. And it's kind of always been a thing when she's stressed out. She has trouble coming out with the right words for things. And kind of expressing herself the way she wants to. And I think it's actually very wise that if you're not quite sure what you want to say nothing. And, my late husband, her dad used to always get mad at me and say, you do that woman thing when you're mad at me and you don't say anything and you give me the silent treatment. And I said, no, that's not it at all. I mean, it's true when I'm really upset or I'm really emotional, so I usually don't say anything. But the reason is, you can't take it back. I mean, like, I don't know if you guys are married, but, if your spouse says something to you that's really awful, say, and they can say later, oh, I didn't mean it, but you still heard it, and it doesn't change that they said it. So it's just better if you don't really know the right word to say something, just don't say anything until you figure it out. So that's wise in general.
Did you guys ever talk about it? Because I imagine, it's one thing for her not to talk to media about it. I understand her not want to talk to, us about it, but I imagine you would have talked to her about it. Did you ever have any sort of advice for her, in those difficult times? And what were those conversations like?
Well, I think it's different because your family's your family no matter what. I mean, so Rhonda, always knew that. So we did stuff like went to the spa, which, if you know me, it's a big sacrifice because I hate that kind of girly crap, but... I took her and her sisters to the spa, and they went and got massages, and they got their nails done, and, we kind of dragged her out to do stuff. And I think that's good because, and, Maria has 3 little kids, and Jennifer has a baby, and that's the thing, too, is having little kids around. They don't care if you're famous. They don't care what your win-loss record is. They love you, To them, she's just Aunt Rhonda, the playground equipment. Let's climb with you, throw me up in the air. So I think that was very, very good for her. Yeah, we want her to win. We don't care if she wins or not, Just come over.
We want to talk a bit more about 7 Generation Games. The last question about Ronda. I mean, the big speculation is if she'll ever fight MMA again. Do you think we'll see her fight MMA again, or do you think WWE is going to be the next sort of set path for her?
Well, right now, I think she really loves what she's doing, and she's really happy at it. So, I think if you're happy and you like what you're doing, they're giving you money, sounds good.
So obviously, we know you're currently at the software convention in Denver. What, other than obviously moving to Chile, what else is new with 7 Generation Games? You obviously specialize in the educational video games. And what are some of the latest updates?
Well, we have 2 games out that are bilingual. So we've got Aztec Meet the Maya and Aztec The Story Begins. And we're moving to have games on more platforms. So we've got a couple games that are 4 games on the iPad and 3 games you can play online. So we're working on trying to get our games on as many platforms as possible, especially moving to Android, which we only have 2 games that are on there right now, because as you get into outside of the US, most people have basically cheap Android phones. And so we're trying to get into that. We're doing a private demo day for investors in Chile. So if you guys want to fly out to Santiago, Chile,
will the Chilean government pay for us like they did for you? Because then we're down.
We can start a Chilean submission radio over there. That's no problem. Yeah. Just need a translator.
Awesome. Yeah, you could just start up in Chile on MMA or something. That would be really cool. So we have a new game that can count premium coming out within the month, and that would be really cool also.
I know we've got a lot of people that listen to the show that are parents, and one of the big things that I'm always talking about, because I don't have any kids yet, but I've worked with kids and I've got a lot of families and friends that have kids, is this problem with children sort of picking up the phone from an early age and going into YouTube, or when they go to restaurants, they have to watch a movie on their phone compared to back in the day, back in my day, back in your day, when children had to sort of do a bit more, I suppose, arty stuff to be entertained. They'd color in, they draw, stuff like that. Now it seems like the phones and some of the games and some of the stuff on the phones, like YouTube, and their ability to use it from a young age, some kids can use it from age of 1, is sort of becoming a problem for certain parents. Obviously, your games are the type of things that, children should be playing on these phones, but how much of a problem do you think kids and phones could become for the next generation, with them being so good at them and picking them up in so many cases from a very, very, very young age, and using those things as a tool to, I suppose, keeping your kids quiet in a restaurant rather than some of the other stuff that they could be doing?
It's funny. I just had to give a talk about that for half an hour for Revista Mama, which is kind of like the parenting magazine of Colombia, except I had to give it in Spanish. So I'll give it to you in English in less than half an hour. Early in my career, I did a lot of research on families who had very low-income families that you would expect to have children who are not as successful beat the odds. So children who did well that wouldn't have been predicted to. And one of the things that we saw is that those mothers, particularly because very often they were single moms, had a lot of things in common. And one of the things they did when they were teaching their kids is they would notice what their child was interested in. So they didn't necessarily sit them down and do flashcards with them. But if you were playing with your little toy elephant, mom would say, "That's an elephant. Elephant starts with an E. Can you say elephant?" And they'd say, "Elephant is gray." And so what they did is they took what the child was interested in at the moment, and they kind of centered their teaching around that. Well, what are kids more interested in now? They're watching these stupid YouTube videos on the phones or tablets or computers, and we're trying to do everything we can to get them off of them. Where instead, maybe you could try to do something more useful. And like I said, that's why we make games that play on iPads and computers, and our big push is moving all of our games within the next year on phones, particularly on Android phones, because that's what kids are interested in. So I think done right, instead of trying to tell the kids don't use this device, I'd say instead have them, how many kids watch Sesame Street? How many kids watch Dora the Explorer? You guys must have Sesame Street in Australia, right?
Of course.
Yeah, it's big.
Yeah.
Number one
and you
show.
have the Wiggles.
Oh, yeah. They've taken over the country. The country's called the Wiggles unofficially.
Oh, yeah. Yes, when Julie was 3 or 4, she wanted to know, could we go to Australia because she wanted to see the Wiggles.
Yeah, hot potato dominates the nation. It's our unofficial anthem at school that we sing.
Oh, my gosh.
No, that's a really fascinating point, and I think everybody needs to take that point because it's something that's unavoidable. I absolutely agree with you, but it's something that you could use to really bring the education out in your children. And it's great that you guys are transferring all this stuff over to phones. Guys, make sure to check out 7generationgames.com. If you're a parent right now, jump on the website. There's so many great games on there for you to choose from. And make sure to jump on the Apple Store and download some of these games that are being transferred. Aztec, The Story Begins is now available for free in the App Store.
Free.
You can learn math and Latin American history on your iPad. I mean, that sounds a lot better than getting your kids to accidentally go on YouTube and watch some kind of weird DIY video that they accidentally stumble upon.
Yeah,
so make sure
opening toys. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Jump on, make sure they learn something. Of course, what a pleasure to have you on the program. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a wealth of knowledge having you on as always. And have a safe trip back to Santiago from Denver. I hope you guys have a great end to the conference.
All right. Thanks so much for having me.